what is going on with the health and fitness stuff? It seems like I looked at some photos of you from 10 years ago and you're like half the size.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I just, you just get tired of everything. So you go, I'd like to be around and feel better. So you just, it's like, it's an always happening thing. I don't feel like it's a thing that you just address once and you're done with it. It's something that you are just thinking about, I think, all the time. You know what I mean?
Is this sort of gone are the days where you can fully live out the degenerate smoking, create a lifestyle?
I did that. I already did it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's, when you're really in it, there's a kind of a freedom to being like, I'm a fucking gross sack of shit. And you just don't care. And you just eat in bed and smoke. And I mean, I used to go to bed at 3 a.m, almost every day. And I would sleep until, I don't know, noon. Like that was normal. I did that for years. And there's like a freedom in being like, yeah, I don't care. I don't give a shit. But I do think it has, well, it literally does have an expiration date. I don't think it does. Like, you will die quicker if you do it that way. So I think you kind of just go like, I actually don't physically feel so great after a while. I think in your head too, like you psychologically are just kind of like, there's another way of doing this. Because part of you kind of, I was somebody who like, I would admire those comedians that were kind of a mess. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you know what I mean? Like you go like, I need to be like this.
But it doesn't feel so contrived. Right? Yeah. Oh, this is their purest artistic expression. Look, they're on stage being themselves. They're a sack of shit being themselves.
Yeah. And I thought that was like, that's kind of like the way, that's when I started, I was like, I leaned into it more. I remember like one of my friends came to one of my early shows once and he was like, hey man, that t-shirt has a hole in it. And I was like, I know. And he was like, you want to wear that on stage? Like, people are watching you. Don't you think they want to see like somebody that's presentable? And I was like, no, like this is the presentation. There's like that you have holes in your shirt. And I kind of was like, I was sure of it. I was like, yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. I didn't feel like I was pulling on an act. I was like, yeah, this is what I would wear around the house.
It's in a way, making effort is sort of detracting from you being you.
Yeah. But I do think that it's all part of like, this is why I hate telling young comedians like how to do it. Like, when they go, give them advice. I'm like, I really don't like giving advice to young, other than do it a lot. Like that's the advice. But as far as like, don't do this, I go, that's not how to do it. Like the way to do it is to do things you think you're supposed to do. And then you figure out how to actually do
whether
it.
or not you're supposed to do them.
Yeah. If I tell you make sure you don't do this, that might keep you from encountering something that actually really sparks something in you. You know what I mean?
Well, there's a difference between 2D lessons that you learn from someone telling you or you're reading it in a book and 3D lessons that you learn from experiencing it firsthand.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a guy called Bill Perkins who lives here in Austin. He came on the show. He wrote this book called Die With Zero, which is about how to sort of make the most of your wealth. And it's written for people who struggle to spend money, even though they might earn a little bit more than they need to. And they're, sort of skin thrifts and they don't spend their money so much. I'm aware that you have no idea what I'm talking about. And I read the book, and then immediately after that, from the podcast, he said, "Oh, why don't you come and wake surf with me?" And I got to learn the lesson both from the book and then from the podcast, and then I got to experience it with him firsthand. And there's a driver outside, and there's a boat, and there's a blah blah, and it's like, now I know what he's talking about. And it's the same with this. You can tell someone, hey, you maybe consider yourself a professional, be presentable, consider your health, go to bed on time, etc.
Yeah.
But if you arrive at that realization yourself, it's way deeper. It's opposed to being like, yeah, I mean, Tom said that, but maybe he's full of shit. I don't know.
Yeah. And honestly, also to make it like on the money thing, like one thing that nobody ever wants to hear is like, money won't make you feel fulfilled. Like no one wants to hear that shit. And then when you actually earn it, and then you go like, oh yeah, this is what people were talking about. Mm-hmm. Like the lesson is not gonna, someone saying it's not gonna affect you the way that actually experiencing it will.
There's a category, a very unique category of lessons. I call them unteachable lessons.
Yeah.
And that's one of them.
Oh, for sure.
Another one is you're not in love with that girl. She's just pretty and difficult to get. And it's how many times do you need to learn that over and over again?
Yeah, some people never learn it.
Yeah, you just continue to chase the slightly unavailable, pretty hot girl.
Yeah,
and you go, no, dude, it's you're doing it again.
And then when you get there, you're going to be like, this is different this time, and then you'll be like,
fix it.
Oh yeah, this is not.
No, it's not. And money won't make you happy is another one of those.
It's just. I know and I understand it too, because so many people hear that and they go, yeah, give me that problem.
Yep.
Give me that problem. Because you're thinking of like your current money problems. And what happens is, yes, that money will solve those problems, but it's not going to solve all of you. It's not going to make
much deeper problem, which is inside of you.
Exactly. You're not going to be like, now everything is satisfied. You're just not going to have those bills.
It's a difficult one with this, right? Because what you want to do, especially if you've hard won a lesson, you want to try and help other people. You go, dude, do you know how much I went through to get to this place of fame or status or fucking the hot chick or whatever? Realize the blood and the sweat and the tears and the sleepless nights and all of that stuff. Please let me save you from the same sort of misguided assumption about life. And yet it's received not even neutrally. It's like negatively received.
Oh, with tons of resistance. Yeah. But I think it just goes to show you that is part of the human experience. No, like you can't teach some of these lessons. It's also why these cliche expressions exist. And you're like, that sound like the reason that thing is said that way is because it's true and because millions of people have already experienced it. That's why we're saying that thing. But again, no one wants to hear it. And I actually don't, the older you get, the more you realize that it makes sense that you need to experience it in order to actually, you know what I mean? Like, in order to act and to have it resonate with you.
The total addressable market for people who want more fame or more hot chicks or more money is basically everybody.
Yeah.
And the total addressable market for people who have got some amount of fame or money or hot chicks is basically zero. So you end up with this sort of weird privileged position. It's like, no. If I had that,
it would be different, yeah.
I can watch me dance through this minefield. I know that you kicked a couple of tripwires, but like you're retarded. Yeah, so like watch me. Watch me do the pirouette through here, like, and my internal voids will be fixed.
Because I'm unique. Yeah. And then the other thing you just realize also as you get older is that like you're so not unique. You really aren't. Like all the shit all your insecurities, all the problems you encounter, all the things that you think about that you think only you're thinking about, man, that's everybody. Like you really are in this thing with 8 billion other people. And all the things that you think are unique to you, they're really not.
Yeah, the veils fall from your eyes. On the weight loss thing, I saw a study that said 37% of Gen Z plan on skipping the gym and just using Ozempic instead. So 30% of Gen Z women are intending to use GLP-1 drugs to reach their weight loss goals compared to 20% of men. And on average, women are setting more ambitious weight loss targets, aiming to shed 23 pounds in 2025, and men are looking to lose 19.
Well, I mean, part of that is probably that those women have like a tougher time in like society with what they think they need to look like. I mean, even though it affects both genders, but yeah, I think that's like a temporary solution to this. I mean, they're going to end up the real problem, if you read some studies about those GLP-1s, is that people lose muscle mass, and they're losing it at a much higher rate than they think they are. Sometimes they're losing 66% in a 10-pound loss. They're losing 66% of that is lean mass, which is not what you want. Like the one thing you want for health and longevity and strength and all that is to retain lean mass. So doing it the slower way with like good nutrition and good workout plan is what you want. I mean, but also, are you surprised? Like everybody wants a quicker solution to something. So yeah, I think we're going to have a bunch of people with gaunt faces and lacking muscle over the next decade. Is going to be a new issue.
Tell you what's been interesting. So I've trained on it maybe once a week, something like that.
Yeah.
And for the last 4 months, Tuesday morning, I've seen Alex Jones in there doing bear crawls. He's running around outside. He's flipping tires over. He's doing this stuff.
Alex Jones?
Yeah. And then I saw I don't know whether I hadn't seen him up close or something. Yeah. And then I saw this famous like Ozempic Jones before and after thing. and he's lost a ton of weight.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of me, like a lot of people on the internet were like, Ozempic's a hell of a drug. I go, I get that, but I've seen him working really, really hard on at gym. And there's kind of now, if you lose weight through hard work, people are just going to say, dude, Ozempic's a hell of a drug.
I know. Yeah.
And you go, well, I might as well use Ozempic. There's like some weird Russian roulette, undeniable situation.
This is the same reason I think why there's all these guys, especially stars, who the one thing they won't talk about is that they're all juicing. You know, it's like this universal thing in Hollywood, and everyone sees if you see a photo or a video, the comments are all like, yeah, it must be nice with this needle. And it's like, yeah, dude, if you just injected that, you're not going to look like him. Like that guy still busts his ass training to be just beyond jacked, right? Like, so, but it's like, in other words, people don't want to, they think that these things are just a quick solution. You still have to work at it. Whether you're going for the juice head that wants to be like super jacked or the person who's just trying to lose weight, if you're just going to do the injection and nothing else, you're going to have less than him
appropriately.
Yeah, exactly. Your results are not going to be impressive. But I mean, that's great that he's
Dude, he looks great. I mean, you're right on the 66% thing. I think almost all of that can be mitigated if you just do resistance training. Yeah. If you lose the weight and you train. But the problem is that people who don't have a health and fitness routine are taking an injection and suppressing their appetite and then losing weight and still not having a health and fitness routine.
I mean, the thing that I learned was that when I saw a nutritionist can really, really change the way you view a lot of things when it comes to weight loss. And so my journey, I would say, is like it's always it's up and down, right? Even like in the last couple of years, like it's not steady state. And like midsummer, I knew I had this series coming up to shoot, and I was like, okay. I go, at the time I was about 100 days out, and I was like, I can just show up as I am, and it's fine. It's going to be fine. No one's like, Tom needs to be a model for this thing. Yeah. But I was like, I'm going to hate myself for not at least putting in an effort. And so I had considered like just doing GLP-1s.
Have you ever tried them?
I did try it once, yes.
How do you feel?
I just didn't eat anything, and then I got off of it. I didn't like that. Mm-hmm. So I considered it for this, just for the shoot, though. Mm-hmm. And I met a nutritionist, and I told him what I was doing at that moment, which is in the midsummer. And I go, so I'm thinking about, maybe just doing. He's like, well, what are you doing right now? And I told him what I was eating and how I was training. He's like, you're not eating enough. So if you get on GLP-1s, you're definitely not going to eat enough. So the thing that I ended up doing was eating way more, but of the right foods. Mm-hmm. And I dialed up the training, and I lost, in this period, going from the 100 days out through the shoot, like around 20 pounds.
But looked way better, probably a little bit of lean mass as well.
And it was, and also the thing that was like surprising was that it was more, like I was eating so much more. I mean, every day I would have, I would start the day with like 4 eggs, some fruit. A little while later, I usually train in that period, and then like a 50-gram protein shake. Lunch was 10 to 12 ounces of lean meat with greens. Another snack in between, and then my dinners were 16 ounces of lean protein with greens, right? So it's like I wasn't eating like this 2 months ago. I was having like, a chicken sandwich and be like, that was good protein. It's like, it's so much, like my protein intake must have been like, I don't know, I was probably having like 40 grams a day, not even thinking about it, versus every day then trying to get in 200 plus grams.
Yeah, exactly. But nobody sleepwalks into 200 grams of protein. Nobody does it.
No.
It's impossible.
It's deliberate.
The only way that you get there is by accident, is if you've gone to some buffet and you just decided to like cave on the like Brazilian fucking whatever it's called, fogo de chao.
But it does work, is like my point for like people who are like, they're like, I need to eat, I'm hungry. It's like, dude, eat this. and tell me that you're like
still hungry,
starving. Yeah, it's just not the case.
On the Ozempic point, I think, was it the Golden Globes that happened recently? What was the award show that happened recently? Such an awesome take from someone that writes for the Free Press. And they said Ozempic and the body condition of most of the people at the Golden Globes shows that the fat acceptance movement was all a scam. So fucking true.
I hate the fat acceptance
the moment that you had an easy route out of being overweight, body positivity went out of the window.
That's so true, because they're such hypocrites. They're such pieces of shit. And this whole thing has always enraged me more than anything, I think. I think because of the fact that I've struggled with it, and I had to deal with the fact that I hated the way I felt or looked, or, you know, you hate that your genetics are the way they are, whatever it is. But I also think part of it's just being a guy, and that, like, guys talk to each other differently. Like, you know, I played sports, and you just get used to someone being like, okay, fat ass. And you're just like, fuck you. You know, that's just like the way dudes talk to each other. And this whole idea that, like, one of my friends is going to be like, I actually think you look really good at any weight. It's like, fuck off. Like, that's not true. And that's what people started to do. Like, I remember this one post where it was like Adele, and they showed her like at her heaviest, and then she'd lost a bunch of weight. I don't know how she lost the weight, but she lost a bunch of weight.
I think she looked pre-Ozempic as well.
I think it was too. And she looked great. And it was just filled, everything was just filled with, I think she looks great in both. And it's like, no, why are you saying that? That's not true. Like, she looks great now. She put in the work, and she obviously ate a certain way and trained, and now she looks great. Like, you can say that, like, yeah, she wasn't ugly before, but no, both are wonderful. It's like, this is
beauty at any size.
This is just nonsense.
It's weird with what people are doing, especially with the fat acceptance, body positivity thing. Like, you don't want to fucking lambast or castigate or be mean to people that are overweight and that are trying.
No.
But also removing any sort of judgment on what is better or worse for you, just that's bad for them. But there's this idea from Isaiah Berlin called the inner citadel, and it's basically, if you can't get what you want, you have to teach yourself to want what you can get. So you sort of retreat into this. So I struggle to make monogamous relationships work. Therefore, monogamy is a flawed system and everyone should be polyamorous.
Right.
I struggle to lose weight naturally. Therefore, weight has no bearing on health, and the entire world needs to accept me at any size, and I need to be beautiful no matter what. I struggle to hold down a job. Therefore, I'm turning to a life of crime, and actually this is like just as acceptable as a normal legitimate.
It's completely disingenuous, and it's all about a lack of accountability. And I think that's the thing about, like, when you talk about body positivity, it's like, you don't need to rip people apart who are not you know, that are overweight or whatever. It's like, I don't know. I don't think that's very productive for them. It's just going to...
Very few people are passive aggressed or patronized into behavior.
Yeah, for sure. But to say, like, this is great, and, you know, and then now people are also doing the same mental gymnastics with the term healthy. Like, well, what is healthy? It's like, you know what the fuck healthy means, stupid. Like, it's not, I'm not making up this word. And they're like, well, who is to say what is healthy? Well, we actually have a pretty good idea of what is healthy. So if your cholesterol is fucking 600, you're not healthy. Like, why are we pretending? But people want you to go, yeah, but like, I can't believe a doctor is going to tell me if I'm healthy. You're like, that's the job, stupid. Like, that's what he's supposed to do. They're telling you that this is not good. And we all know that if you're carrying that much weight, you're talking about like 350, 400, and then the idea that, like, that's okay, well, you know it's not.
Before we continue, Tom just confirmed what we all knew. Steroids in Hollywood are everywhere. But the reality is, there aren't any cheat codes for losing weight and keeping muscle unless you want to end up on some Olympic doping list. However, there are science-backed supplements like Tonkat Ali to support testosterone, strength, and recovery. And that is why I partnered with Momentous, because they make the only NSF-certified Tonkat Ali on the planet. That means it's so rigorously tested that even Olympic athletes can use it. And that is why I'm such a huge fan, because they make the most carefully tested, highest quality supplements on Earth. This is a huge part of my brain, body, and sleep stack, which makes a huge difference to my cognition, my strength, and my recovery. The evidence behind this is really impressive. It is completely natural, but has a profound impact on your testosterone, as I learned from Dr. Andrew Huberman. And if you're still unsure, Momentous offers a 30-day money-back guarantee. So you can buy it and try it for 29 days, and if you don't love it, they'll give you your money back. And they ship internationally. Right now, you can get 20% off everything, plus that 30-day money-back guarantee by going to the link in the description below or heading to livemomentous.com/modernwisdom using the code modernwisdom at checkout. That's livemomentous.com/modernwisdom and modern wisdom at checkout. Did you see that rapper who was disallowed from getting into a Lyft car and she's now suing Lyft?
Yeah. Rapper is like, I know that she claims to be. Let's not give her too much credit. I don't think she's signed to a label, but yeah, I did.
Person who raps.
Yeah.
I identify as a person who raps.
A person who raps, who is, I believe the thing said she was 392, which is like not a lot of scales giving you that. I don't know if they went over to the truck stop and figured it out, but she is enormous. And a driver was like, yeah, don't get in here.
I think he was worried about his tires.
Yeah, he's probably thinking about suspension, rear axle, and was like, no. And now they're like, well, just suing for discrimination. It's like, well, maybe the guy has a point that he has a older car.
Could you imagine? I don't know whether this is right, but imagine that she'd got in the car and there'd been some sort of an accident due to that. I don't know. I mean, it's 400 pounds. Like, surely you could have like 2 or 3 other people in the car. That seems, unless it's because it's all in one space. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. I think it's an interesting one. But also, I guess on the flip side of that, I realized a while ago that people who were fat had a problem with Ozempic because it was sort of denying their right to exist. And it was this, yeah. But then there was a bunch of people that were in shape that had a problem with it too, because it gave people who didn't need to use as much hard work and willpower an easier route to being in shape. I'm aware that losing fat isn't being in shape because there's muscle tone and all the rest of the stuff. But still, like, you would look at somebody that is half the size, that's 150 as opposed to 300, and you go, yeah, they're more in shape, at least with clothes on.
Yeah.
And it's everybody is threatened in one form or another by shortcuts. Yeah. Everybody is.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the reason that you look at someone who's in shape and you go, wow, that's good. I feel some sort of sense of like warmth and trustworthiness. It's because it's a reliable signal of what they've done to have to get there.
Exactly.
Whereas now you just think, hey, are you hardworking and consistent, or have you got a prescription for Ozempic?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is a thing that people do, and it's like, especially you see somebody who has never done anything before, and then they drop weight, and then they go, yeah, you kind of look at them like, oh, you did the cheat code, and then you kind of dismiss them as a person. You just go like, oh, you're a shortcut person, which I understand. I mean, that's
and now it's an unfalsifiable, and it's losing weight either naturally or with assistance is the getting jacked naturally or with assistance for dudes. It's like it's just a totally like unprovable hypothesis.
The crazy thing about this getting jacked thing though is like people don't know how even the people that are in Hollywood that they go, well, that person's not on it. They're on it too. I know so many people who are geared out of their minds, and even ones who you go, well, this person had a naturally lean aesthetic before, and so it's believable that like, no, they're on it too. They're all on it. They just never want to talk about it. It's almost like the most taboo thing you can bring up for some of these guys, even though it's like so obvious
and out in the open,
especially
from the way
like for people that like are around fitness and in the gym, like you just know, like there's just tells, you just know, but they don't want to be seen. They don't want the perception to be that they took a shortcut.
I wonder if that'll change. People are coming out online, fitness influencers and stuff like that.
It would be great. I mean, for some reason, the last place where they're not doing it is Hollywood, which is like, it's all bullshit anyways, right?
It's all the fugazi. It's all people are wearing makeup. They've got special lighting.
It's all bullshit, but none of them want to talk about it. And it's pervasive. It's so incredible how many are doing it.
Did you see that you can reset your Instagram algorithm now? They just released this week. So you can completely wipe your Instagram algorithm and start basically afresh.
Wow. So that'd probably be healthy for me.
Well, yeah, you have a death and cars, right? That's it.
I mean, I have workplace accidents, barbecue recipes, Italian women's feet, watches. Yeah, I gotta.
You really need this. This was made for you.
Wow.
But yeah, I wonder if it'll purge all of the fitness influencers that everybody followed when they first started Instagram in 2011.
Because you kind of there's this trick that happens to your mind too. When you open your algorithm, you just go, well, this is what it is.
This is the world. Everybody's looking at Italian
Everybody
women's
is seeing these. Yeah. And you're like, this is how we're all spending our time. Yeah.
I think that'd be fascinating. Reset your Instagram algorithm.
How do you, there's like an actual
button. Yeah, it's in the app. They've released
it's like
it.
Start over.
I think it said want to start afresh. ? Is the page that you go to. You have to accept some terms and conditions. It feels a little bit like euthanizing someone. Mm-hmm. You're like, okay, are you sure that you're prepared to get rid of, a decade of you building up this very carefully curated algorithm?
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's a little bit that lingers there, and they go, we'll let him try, but something tells us like we might just have to throw the old shit in a little bit until he gets used to the new stuff. But that'd be fascinating to see what I actually want now, as opposed to what I've fucking compounded.
I've ruined so many other people's algorithms, you know that?
By browsing on their phone?
No, just I send them videos and then they go, dude, now they're like, now I get sent like cyclists falling off a cliff every day. And I'm like, oh yeah. They're like, you fucked everything up for me. And nothing makes me happier than like knowing that one of my friends is getting
cursed
videos
with the same algorithm.
Yeah, I'm like, good.
Ryan
man.
Long was doing some research for a bit, and he was looking at quadruple amputees.
Yeah.
And he's now just got his entire algorithm.
I know. You dive down these rabbit holes on there, and then you're like,
oh, that's the shit you like.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll give you more.
We'll give you
He's
more.
like, I was doing some research briefly,
I was just
but
looking,
now kind
man.
of I do.
Yeah, now it's like, my buddy Bert looks at like just like poverty-stricken people preparing meals. So it's just like somebody like really lower income being like, this is all I have, and they're making lunch. And then like, he's like, yeah, I'm just fascinated by this. I'm like, what the fuck? And he's just like, and if you look at his phone, it's just like people below the poverty line making meals.
It's a feedback loop.
Yeah.
I had a guy on that wrote the book on artificial intelligence, the textbook that was used worldwide in like 100 languages, something like that. And Stuart Russell, he said there's this really interesting thing. There's two ways that algorithms can be better at predicting what it is that you're going to click on. One is that they continue to feed you clickable content. But the other one, it's bidirectional. The other one is to nudge your preferences so that you become easier to predict. And I was like, that makes so much sense, because all that it's looking to do is maximize clicks.
Yes.
But there's two people in this. There's both the content that's being served and there's the preferences of the person that's clicking. Mm-hmm. So over time, these algorithms nudge people's preferences. And how easier is it to predict what somebody will or will not click on than by pushing them out to the fringe of any viewpoint? If you are, I know exactly what you're going to like and what you're going to hate, because you're out on the right, or you're out on the left, or you're at the top or the bottom or whatever. Mm-hmm. Super easy. If you're in the middle and you're like, I'm going to fall this way, I'm not so bothered about that. Really, really hard. So it's like, I haven't ever heard anybody talk about the other direction of how algorithms work, by nudging your preferences to be more predictable, not by getting better at serving you stuff that it knows you're going to click on.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. It's scary too, the way it does. I've actually utilized the thing a lot on Instagram, the not interested, because like sometimes you're like, what the fuck is why is this here? And you start to like hit that, because hopefully just to get like something new.
Train
right?
it.
Yeah.
There's I remember this was on Facebook ages ago, but the power of saying, don't show me this page again, or show me fewer posts like this.
Yeah.
It's 100 to 1, I think, compared with a like. So it's so rare, right? It's so much more effortful for you to say like, not interested in this thing. So yeah, I mean, that's the trade. Or you can just completely, 500 days of summer it and decide to get back.
Have you done that? Have you done a totally like?
No, I only found out about it yesterday, so I'd consider it. I think I probably will.
Unplug?
Oh yeah. Well, no, just reset. I don't think
reset.
I can do. I'd spent a week in Jamaica where I didn't have my phone. Does that count?
No, but wasn't that though like a type of experience for you? The fact that you like, I have friends that like are really have done the thing where they give the account to somebody else to post. They're like, this is just rotting my brain. I'm spending way too much time. And a couple of them that I can think of told me that it made them so much happier. So in other words, they just go, here's the password. I'll tell you when to post things. I don't want to have anything to do with it anymore.
I think a lot of people like that. But one of the things I realized when I was in Jamaica was if you don't have any, so this was the week leading up to TikTok ban, all of that stuff. If you have to self-generate things to talk about, it's really interesting because you get to places that are a little bit deeper, that are a little bit more interesting. But on the flip side, like you realize how reliant you are on, do you see that blah, 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 blah that happened this morning? Oh, have you noticed that Trump said to do this thing? And you go, okay, so not only is it sort of capturing my time and my attention, it's even like getting inside of me and staring out through my own eyes and making noises come out of my mouth.
Yeah, because part of it is that you feel like you're in the game, right? Like
contributing.
And also like if you're completely unplugged, then you're one of those people that's just like, huh? What happened? A healthcare guy got shot? Like you
don't want to be that guy.
You don't want to be the guy that doesn't know anything. So there is like this kind of balance of like, do you want to be in the game or you don't want to be obsessed? Also with like, because I do this thing where especially when I'm alone, right? Where you do the cycle. I call it like where I go like YouTube, Instagram, emails, TikTok, YouTube, like
WhatsApp,
whatever. Like you just WhatsApp, and then you're just like, wow, like the hard thing for me is when you get back from a show, like I'm on the road, at the show, you're in your room, and you're like, all right, it's time to like, I should go to bed soonish. I'm just gonna look for a second.
2 hours later.
And that's like, you get into that loop. It's like you have to have the discipline to just be like, no.
It's the advantage of being around people, and it's the disadvantage if you spend a lot of time on your own, because you like assuage your feelings of loneliness by having a friend.
Yes.
You go, well, I'm not going to feel alone. I don't need to feel bored. I don't need to have the whatever. You go, okay, well, if the person's here, it's like phone can fuck off. I don't think about it. Exactly. You're having a great conversation with a friend, I'm not thinking about it.
That's right.
The second that they leave, you're like, bored again.
Yeah. And it's like the millisecond.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're just like I mean, like when it's like they're like, I'm going to go to the bathroom. You're like, okay. It's like it's so immediate.
Yeah,
it's like, it is a drug.
I got followed. It was a couple of weeks ago now. There was a period for about 2 weeks where tons and tons of Latino and Spanish accounts were following me. And I was like, that's a fucking red flag. Yeah. And like something's happened in Spanish somewhere, and I can't read it. I can't decipher it. I don't know what has caught, but something upstream.
Was it AI translated all your shit?
No, it was just like I maybe someone or something had got a hold of something that I'd said. Yeah. And I'm like, this could be positive. This could be the beginning of me fucking starting some sort of war with like the country of Mexico. I don't know. But I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, fuck. Like being followed by, it was the same. Whitney Cummings told me that after she did that CNN thing, tons of comedians texted her saying that was so funny, and she's like, immediate red flag. If lots of comedians text you and say that the thing you just did on TV was funny, huge warning sign. Massive fucking warning sign. Like that was the
wait, did you figure out what?
No, still no. I'm just like, it's an open loop. I'm flying in the dark here. I have no idea.
Comedians complimenting you definitely makes you go like,
I fucked up.
I did something wrong.
I went to this daytime house music party in Austin on Saturday. It's called Mushroom Cowboy. So it's
microdose the kind of event?
I don't know. I think they're kind of hinting at that, but it's in a coffee. Well, it was outside of a coffee shop off Congress.
Yeah.
So I turn up at 10:30. It started at 10, and the queue is 250 yards long for coffee.
What?
And there must have been 1,500 people there. One guy brought a baguette, was raving with his baguette. There was dogs, pretty sober looking from the outside. Maybe some people smoking weed, but I think this is maybe the beginning of us seeing the end of like hardcore drink culture. If you've looked at how few of Gen Z now drink,
yes,
it's I think maybe 20%.
The interesting thing is like the theories on why, because there's obviously there have to be theories, right? Mm-hmm. On we don't actually know exactly. Yeah, one of them is that the youth views drinking as like what their parents did, right? So that's like, well, that's
naturally uncool.
Yeah. Like, my fucking lame ass dad drinks. Yeah. Like, I'm not interested. And so that's one thing. The other part of it is that this group of people that are the youth right now are so much more informed on what the negative aspects of drinking and what it can do to you, that they're just like, why would I consume
myself.
this? Yeah, to something like that. And that they've found this whole other, when you want to take the edge off, there's a lot more options. And it's also a lot more accepted today than it was 20 years ago. Like the idea that you could microdose or do edibles or smoke, or, and then there's like all the, ketamine and everything is like, I have different things that I do when I want to have a recreational good time. And yeah, but it's undeniable that it's definitely way down.
There's more daily users in the US of weed now than there are of alcohol.
Is that for real?
Overtaken, or at least that was the most recent study that I saw. In the US, there are now more daily or near daily marijuana users than daily or near daily alcohol users.
And that thought was just completely, like, if you're a teen right now, you don't understand how preposterous that sounds coming from, like, if you were growing up in the 80s and 90s. Like, you were just like, those were like the fringe people almost. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it was popular, but it was not like a respectable person really wasn't doing that. It was like the arts, it was like hippies and yeah, it was, I mean, people thought of it as like the absolute worst thing that could happen. I mean, people from like my dad's generation likened marijuana to heroin. They didn't even see like really a difference. They're just like, you're a junkie. It's like, but what, for smoking a joint? Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, that's the way they viewed it. So the fact that it's that accepted now, it's mind blowing to me.
I wonder if some of it is that drinking in the house on your own feels pretty fucking bad.
Yeah.
But smoking in the house on your own, you're like, I'm playing Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. But if you're 6 beers deep playing Call of Duty,
yeah,
it's a different story.
Yeah, and you're not playing well at that. You're just like,
I don't know how well people are playing on weed either. But
fuck.
Yeah,
you're probably more likely to yell out pejorative slurs. Yeah, I think that. I mean, look, smoking is still not good for you. So like, you're probably, but we've discovered that, there's other ways to ingest and like consume. And that's what I think is part of like this youth culture thing about staying away from drinking, is they're like, whatever, I do droplets in this, or I have my gummy or whatever, however they want to consume. But they're definitely not drinking, man. They're not drinking like everybody else before them did.
I used to run nightclubs for ages, and one of the big downturns we've seen has been in nightlife industry. I think the UK is losing a nightclub a week. There's not like an unlimited number of nightclubs. It's like one is shutting down pretty much every single week. And I asked a friend who's still in the industry why he thought that was the case. He said, smartphones, man. Back in the day, you could be as loose as you wanted. You could sort of have that Larry, louty drinking spirit, at least in Britain.
That they don't want to be recorded?
Of course.
Yeah.
Like if you mess up and like shit yourself in the middle of a nightclub in 2002, it's a story that you can deny the next day.
Yeah.
And then after 6 months, most people have probably forgotten.
Yeah.
Whereas if that happens in 2025, that's now concretized on the internet for everybody to know and bring back up and make memes out of for the rest of time.
I mean, can you imagine like how the pro athletes of the 80s and 90s and early 2000s would just go out and just destroy a woman's hopes and dreams. And then now they're like, everyone's
on edge.
Yeah, everyone's got a phone out. It's just, it's a totally different. By the way, do you ever think about why, because I still remember that, like, why was house music and dancing in general so much bigger in Europe than here? People here were never like, let's go dance.
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess, why does any scene of any kind appear anywhere? We certainly have in the UK like a good house music culture.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't have much else to do other than go out and party and drink.
Yeah.
If the weather's bad, then we're not going to go out to the ranch. We're not going to go and see the sunset. We're not going to go to the beach because it's fucking freezing cold all the time. So you kind of just zero in on the one thing that's reliable, which is beer.
Yeah.
Pubs or clubs.
Yeah. No, I just remember like so many times like being in the States and having like European friends who are like, why don't you guys don't like to go dance? And I was like, no we're not going dancing, bro. like no. And then I would remember like studying abroad and being like, oh yeah, that was like a normal thing. Just go to a place that was just like packed and everybody just loud music dancing. It just was one of those things where I was like, it just didn't translate over here. I mean, there were still clubs, obviously, but it just wasn't the same type of, oh, I just want to go listen to this and literally dance. Like that's what people I felt like were doing a lot more in Europe than here.
Yeah, there's another study that just came out recently about rates of sexlessness. Mm-hmm. So this has sort of been talked about for ages. And there was this big study in 2018 that looked really scary, and then it kind of got reversed in the GSS data. Then there's this new one. Rates of sexlessness are climbing among adults aged 22 to 34. Stats plucked from the newly unsheathed National Survey of Family Growth showed 10% of young males and 7% of their female counterparts saying they're still virgins. That's 22 to 34.
Damn.
In sum, for all young adult males, sexlessness has roughly doubled in all measures over the last 10 years. For young females, it has risen by roughly 50%. So 24% of men, 22 to 24, had not had sex in 2022, up from 9% in 2013. And for females, the number was 13%, up from 8%. And when asked if they'd had sex in the last 3 months, 35% of men said no, jumping from 20%, and women didn't fare much better with 31%, up from 21%. So basically, not going out, not partying, not having sex,
not socializing.
The highest rates. Yeah, it seems so.
Yeah. So there's a real pervasive issue of loneliness is a real thing that most people don't think about if they're not lonely. If they have company, if they have friends, if they have relationships, you don't realize how many people are literally lonely people. Like they're alone. They don't have that companionship. And you take it for granted, I think, if it's not something that you have to deal with, you know? And then have you ever met somebody who you realize is lonely in this world? And it affects you. It affected me, like where you just go like, oh, this person just doesn't have relationships. Like there's, there could be so many reasons why, but what I'm saying is that it's so many more people than you think about when you're not in that position. It's so many more people. So many people are lonely. I'm not surprised by it. The other thing about like the sexual statistics, I was first surprised when I heard one of my friends has daughters that are college age and was saying that, he was like, yeah, like she all through her adolescence into high school, everything, just hung out with girls. And she was like, she's never had the experience of like, oh, guys are aggressive. She was like, guys don't talk to us. Like that's the world that she grew up in. Is like, she was going to college and was like, she's like, well, hope I don't get raped. But that's what she thinks of like men, is that like they're either predators, but she just didn't.
Predators or incels. Those are the two choices.
She was like, yeah, but like she just didn't have the experience of like boys trying to like hit on her or just even engage. She was just like with girls. And then she was like, yeah, guys. And I think there's like a lot you can deduce from that. But some of it too is that like, is like about the guys, not necessarily, but like about how those guys have been growing up in the last, decade plus in a different environment than like we grew up in, or that I grew up in, right? Which was like, they came up in this, sure, there's been like there's a feminism cycle that's always happening, but they also grew up in like Me Too and all these things that become and like some of those boys become fearful of interacting with women. They're like, well, I don't want to be seen as like this. So, and what happens is they just wait. That'll happen later. Like my interactions, then they're 15, 16, 17. Now they're in college and they've still yet to interact. So
like, no experience with talking.
With no experience. So then it makes sense to when you hear a statistic like, well, they're 22 or 24 and they're virgins, like they're still probably like, oh, that's going to happen later.
Because Me Too happened as they were about to start speaking to girls.
To me, it seems like a pretty logical way to tie things in, right? Like, and these were like the dominant stories. Remember, you couldn't get away from these stories. And so, I don't know, to like build, you want to raise somebody, I have boys, you want to raise them in a healthy environment and like, teach them how to interact with the opposite sex. But like, I think if you don't have encouragement to like, yeah, try and talk and just be normal, and you're just like, you guys are the predators. Like it can be probably scary for some of those young kids.
The huge problem with telling men don't be pushy is that the guys who need to hear it the most aren't going to take heed.
They're never going to hear it.
And the guys who really should be encouraged more are going to take it to heart.
Yeah, that's true. It's like gun laws.
How so?
Well, like you can have the strictest gun laws, but the people who really like who want guns are just gonna fucking get them anyway.
If you're sufficiently motivated, you'll find a way to.
Yeah, dude. You're just. I mean, gun laws are like, they exist on paper, but like if you want a gun and you're like, I'm getting one and I'm going to shoot someone, like you're not gonna be like, oh shit, that's against the law. Like you're just gonna do what you want to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's those are the people that they write the laws for. They write them for those guys.
We'll get back to talking to Tom in 1 minute, but first I need to tell you about Nomadic. Traveling should be about the journey, not, see that one hand, the chaos of packing, which is why I partnered with Nomadic. Their travel pack, this 14-litre, is this the 14? This is the 14-litre travel pack. This is the biggest life changer from a luggage perspective that I've ever had. It's what I use every single day, and it makes traveling genuinely so much more enjoyable. They've got compartments for everything. Your laptop, your shoes, your sunglasses. The bag is so clean, you half expect it to start flirting with a flight attendant. And if you're still on the fence, their products will last you literally a lifetime with their lifetime guarantees. This is the final backpack that you ever need to buy. Plus, you can return or exchange any product in 30 days for any reason. So, you can buy your new bag, try it for a month. If you don't like it, they just give you your money back, and they ship internationally. And you can get a 20% discount and see everything that I use and recommend, including this game-changing backpack, by going to the link in the description below or heading to nomatic.com/modernwisdom. That's nomatic.com/modernwisdom. Have you learned much about like yourself or your nature, seeing it reflected back to you and your boys?
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, my youngest is like my twin, and it's fucking, it's just, he's very sensitive, and he also like flies off the cuff. He's like Joe Pesci though. He's just like motherfucker. And you're like, God damn, he's 6 years old. And he's just, he has the craziest mouth on him. But like every time he does something, like he explodes with like a reaction to something, my wife just goes,
that's your genetics.
She's like, that's you. And I'm like, I mean, I'm talking about like if he bumps a table, he's like, what the fuck? Why is this fucking thing here? I'm like, and then she's like, you do that. I'm like, okay. But he's also like he's really sweet and he's really sensitive, very tender kid. And she's like, that's who you are, like at your core. You're this sweet guy and you have this exterior, like this little maniac, but she's like, you guys are so sometimes you're like, and the other thing that kids do is like, you don't realize because you interact so much with adults, as an adult, and then they'll say things to you. Like I've flown off the handle and been like, what the fuck are you guys doing? And like my kids will be like, hey, we are kids. You don't talk to a kid like that. And I'll be like, okay, sorry.
Reverse discipline.
Yeah, like seriously. And they're like, why would you yell like that? I'm like, because you're painting the house. You're putting paint on the house. Like, stop painting the walls of the house. And they're like, okay, just say it. I'm like, okay, I shouldn't have to tell you, don't paint the house. You're not a painter.
We shouldn't have to tell you not to fly off the handle.
And we shouldn't tell you not to yell. You don't have to yell like that. I'm like, okay, can you please stop painting the house? So that, cause I have to call a real painter now to fix what you just did. And they're like, okay, see how that worked? I'm like, yeah, great. But yeah, it totally resets you. You're like, what? Am I on my fucking mind here? Like, yeah, but it does work. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
It's so funny. We got to talk about this headline. The Department of Governmental Efficiency and this Office of Management finding $50 million was earmarked to spend on condoms in Gaza. Do you see this?
No. In condoms?
Department of Governmental Efficiency and the Office of Management and Budget found that the Biden administration was about to send $50 million to fund condoms for Gaza. This was yesterday. This is the biggest thing on Twitter at the moment.
And when, like, do we know when they were about to do this? So they were just like, stop having babies?
I don't know why. So there's two main theories for why it might have been.
Okay.
First one's money laundering.
50
million.
Okay.
A lot of money laundering. Second one is a lot of Palestinians had been attaching IEDs to condoms that were filled with like refrigerant gas.
What?
IEDs.
Okay.
And then releasing incendiary devices in Israeli territory. So it's like they can float these things over and then drop IEDs, drop incendiary devices. So those are the two main theories. The one that it's money laundering, and the second one that it's improvised explosive condoms.
Wait, but money laundering benefiting who though?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's not. I actually think that's not enough money to be like a strong money laundering.
50 mil?
50 million is not that much money. When you talk
Drop
about
in the ocean.
Well, when you talk about the grand scale of like government fundings and criminal law, like 50 million is not like the amount where you go like, it's not like,
well, maybe they thought they could get it under the radar. I don't know how useful that is, but
I mean, it seems like I didn't know about the IED. That part is, if they're like, look, we can't send you bombs, but we'll send you some condoms, and you guys know, you do your little,
some helium in them.
You do your little wizardry that you've been doing. It's so fascinating that people can make anything useful for what, because you always hear these like prison stories,
dude,
where they're like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. Well, that's how they're just like, yeah, these guys, they made their shoelace and a toothbrush into a knife. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? and then, they can't give them anything because everything becomes a weapon, right? And so I would have never guessed that. I thought what you were going to go with was they were just saying like, look, you're going to keep having sex, but stop making babies because you just, like that would be the explanation for it.
Restriction and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, or just like you don't want to have babies in this environment. So start wearing.
Yeah, that's an altruistic way to look at it.
It's like a logical way to go. Like, but
no. Floating IEDs.
Floating IEDs.
Touched by.
Also, because it's like, it's dark in that if the explanation is like, look, on paper we can't send you weapons. You guys just have this.
You know what to do.
You know what to do.
You know what to do with the condoms.
And that's our way of saying we support you too. Yeah. We support both of you. Just you with condoms and you with missiles. Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine that's the fight. Condoms versus missiles.
I mean, it kind of is.
One person's throwing rocks, the other one's throwing an entire technological armory.
It's fucking wiped out, man.
Yeah. There was it's like the two stories that I saw yesterday. The first one was about maybe these condoms are being used for IEDs. And the second one was the International Doomsday Clock Federation saying it's at 89 seconds to midnight. It's like the closest that it's ever been. And this is how close humanity is to destruction or self-destruction or something like that. And I'm like, if it's like a day clock or something, or 12-hour clock, and you're at 89 seconds, maybe it was at 90 or 91 or something before, like we're so close now, we should just move it back to like 6 p.m. and then increase the increments between it. It's like 89, like what does that mean?
What does that
89
mean?
I don't know. Well, it's basically that this decision reflects concerns over nuclear risk, climate change, and disruptive technologies like AI, indicating a dire warning about humanity's proximity to existential threats. It's the closest point it's ever been to symbolic global catastrophe. It's like, what does 89 seconds mean? What does that even mean?
I have no idea. I'm completely lost. I microdosed this morning, so I don't know.
Let's fucking go.
Okay.
Let's fucking go.
89 seconds.
I don't know what it means, but it seems to me like this period that we're in now has got definitely a lot more unpredictability, largely because of Trump. It's like, what's actually going to happen?
Do you think that, you know how people are always doing this thing of they're like, hey, the end of the world has to be near at this point, like everything. Do you think there's ever been a time when people weren't saying that?
No.
I think it's always been a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But people always are like, and I mean, yeah, Trump is like, I mean, he's such a polarizing figure. I've never seen somebody also, in my opinion, be so transparently themselves and have people react to that person in such extreme different way. Like, he so clearly is who he is. He doesn't put up this disguise. And then you have people who see it through the lens of like, this is like somebody who's here to save us. And you're like, what? And then,
or destroy us.
Yeah. And so like people either see him as like this great person who has best intentions for citizens and country, and then other people who are like, this is a con man, you know? But I mean, it's just so insane to me that there's both views.
The same guy.
It is the same guy.
Doing the same things.
Yeah. And it's I thought it was so clear who he is. Like he just reads so clearly.
It's like the Rorschach test?
Yeah.
It's like an ideological Rorschach test.
It kind of is.
Hey, look at is it bunny, rabbit, butterfly, sunrise? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
And some people see one and some people see the complete opposite.
It's a fascinating thing though, right? When you think about it that way, about this person, that he can exist and be who he is, say the things he says, has his resume, has like a clear list of actions, and there's no mystery to who this person is, and people still choose to view it through it's not even choose, it's just the way it is. Like human beings view this through completely different lenses. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah. Have you ever met him?
No, I sat like 6 feet from him.
Okay.
And I didn't meet him though.
Didn't get to shake his hand. I saw this video of him shaking Gavin Newsom's hand, and there's a huge debate online about who out-alphaed who.
Oh.
And because Trump does thing,
he does,
but then Newsom like knows it's coming. They must have prepped. They must have like
for sure
practiced the thing.
They're like, this is gonna be
a big deal. And as he pulls him in, Newsom puts his hand on his shoulder like that. So he's like sort of pushing and pulling like
shoulder.
That. Yeah. So it's like, how you sort of tap someone on but he's gone on the front. So as he gets pulled in, he's able to leverage. It's so interesting. But I don't know, like there's a bit of me. I mean, how long's he been in office? Like fucking 2 weeks or some shit?
Yeah, it's very, very quick.
Every morning I wake up to NPR because I like to drop my testosterone first thing in the morning.
Sure.
And it's just Trump headline, Trump headline, Trump headline, Trump headline, Trump headline. It's like just him. I'm kind of already a bit
I had this
sick of it.
I had this like, so on his first term, I got 1000% news fatigue from that. No, like when he went out of office, I was like collapsing. And I realized that actually over the last 4 years, I consumed way less news than I used to. I used to like be kind of all day reading that. And since he's been in office, I've seen headlines. I know about, multiple executive orders, but I don't even want to get into that emotional investment. It's almost like when you're a fan of a team, like you don't really have the experience of being a sports fan unless you're emotionally invested. That's really when you're a fan, is when
unless it could ruin your day.
Yeah, it has to ruin your day. Otherwise, you're not really a fan. And yes, obviously, like I live in this country. I want things to go well here. I'm hoping for the best, but I cannot emotionally invest in Trump news and just what's happening with this administration like I did the first time, because it just frankly takes up too much energy and too much time. And I have a number of things going on, and I do not want to be. It's also a distraction. It's not really affecting you the way you think it is. You start to like hear these things, and then you just bark at your friend about it. You're like, you just fucking believe this bullshit. It's like, it's not really affecting most people in the way that they think it is and that they say it is. It just isn't. Like in the way that most presidents in there don't really change your life that much. So now I know there's people that are going to hear this and be like, well, it kind of affected my life because X, Y, and Z happened. Okay, so there's things that are exceptions to that. But for the most part, like what the president is doing, whoever the president is, it doesn't really affect your life that much. You can choose to invest in such a way where it starts to do, like literally, it's like the energy of your day went into reacting to what this person did that you either love or hate. And it's like, I can't do it.
Well, think about, you're worried about the outcomes of the policy or whatever. Maybe that'll impact you, maybe it won't. But you can ruin your day worrying about
it.
No matter, regardless of what happens. This thing does or doesn't happen. It doesn't matter. Your day's already been ruined by worrying about what it is that's gone on. Like, I don't know, political anxiety or something.
It reminds me of like the fear of conversations, like confrontation. Like when you go, Chris did something, and I want to talk to him about it, but like, fuck. And you start to like play in your head all the ways that it could go. You know what I mean? And you have like this anxiety building inside of you of like, and you start to avoid and avoid and avoid. And then it's just like, just have the conversation. And then you realize that the worry about the conversation is worse than the conversation itself, right? Like everything leading up to that, it's all in your head. So I don't want to have all this exercise in my mind where I'm just like so emotionally drained by what the president is doing. It's like, I feel that as a distraction.
Isn't it interesting that like our fear of fear is so much worse than whatever it is that we've got to fear?
Yeah.
Like just reliably.
Yes. It's like you learn that you can actually, if you're in your 20s, you can start, I think, get into the practice of like, you learn that like because conversations are a thing that I think really make people scared. Communicating with people about like what you want, what you need, like those types of things, those aren't inherently, you're not just like good at that. You have to get into it. And like the younger you can get into the practice of doing it, this is what I think, this is how I feel. Oh my God, you're in a totally different group. You're in a totally different group than the people who, repress and just shut down. Like, I mean, that's how I was built. Just like, just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Don't talk.
You don't have needs. Yeah. Subjugate them. Your desires aren't worthy.
Yeah.
There's no point in doing this.
You just shut down. And then, that's going to show itself somewhere else.
Yeah. Neil Strauss says unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments. And people just have this like sense, well, you should have known.
Yes.
Like I wanted this thing.
Yes.
You go, well, you didn't fucking tell me.
Yeah. How do you
but now I'm resentful about the fact that you didn't do the thing that I didn't ask you to do.
I resent you for not knowing my thoughts. Is what you're
if you loved me.
Yeah.
If we were really friends,
and
you would have known this.
That is an unrealistic expectation to put on somebody. Yeah. And sometimes it's you that needs to go like, oh yeah.
Got to advocate for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some people, like you really can put that work in. You can realize that earlier in life. There's actually like a similar thing, I think, for like health and fitness, which we were talking about, which is like, they're not tied to communication, but you realize that there's some people who they get it kind of beat into them how important that is young, and they stick with it. And look, man, it's a lot. I want to say it's easy, but it's easier to stay and maintain in your good health and fitness than it is to get way out of it and go back there. So like if you're a young person and you are, one of my friends said one time, he goes, I've never been out of shape. Like I was training as a teen, and he's like, I've just never been out of shape. I'm like, oh yeah. Like he's like, so you make that priority. That's a way better thing. And I think there's a parallel for learning how to communicate about yourself. If you can work on those skills of like standing up for yourself, learning to talk about things that are bothering you or feeling or whatever, and you can maintain and build on that in a younger age, you're way ahead. You're way ahead.
Was that assertiveness something that you struggled with when you were younger?
1,000%. I mean, I didn't have a good model for it, honestly. Like I think like my dad was somebody that just like, he was just kind of shut down and take it. And so I feel like I was just like, oh, like if something is bothering you, you just deal with it. Yeah. Yeah. You just deal with it. And I think I totally modeled that behavior, of just, okay, like just push it down. So yeah, it took years, I think, of it bothering you enough to realize, and then you of course explode, right? Because you've just repressing things.
You have all of these resentments that build up over time.
Yeah. And then it just kind of shows itself in other ways. But yeah, I mean, I've gotten to a place, I think, where at the very least, an awareness of like, you have to communicate, and, I've become much more assertive, and I, say what I want and talk to people way differently than I did 10, 15, 20 years ago.
It's strange that I have that too. Lots of people have lots of discomfort around advocating for themselves.
Yeah.
So the only way you can serve anybody else is if you're You can, serve people from the saucer that overflows around your cup. Like, how are you going to sort anybody else if your stuff hasn't been sorted? And there's this stat about it's the likelihood that people ensure their dog completes a course of antibiotics is 95%. The likelihood that they complete a course of antibiotics is 50%. We're literally better at looking after an animal than we are at looking after ourselves.
That makes total sense. I also think that there's something where, like, if you have a friend, like, it's more likely that I would advocate for you harder than I would for myself.
Yeah. Way easier.
Yeah, it's way easier to do. Yeah. Like, and really dig into how fucking dare you tell.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, but
you'll really stand up for them.
Yeah,
but then you'll be encouraging to them. It's like, I'm going to fight on your behalf, but once we're done, I'll come. Don't worry, man. Like, you tried your best. It's like the level of support.
Yeah, that's
and
the other
self-love.
Oh my God, the way that you talk to friends about any of their struggles and like how they should see themselves versus how we talk to ourselves. When I heard that first broken down, I was like, oh my God, like, I'm so abusive.
I'm a criminal.
Yeah. Like, it's like, yeah, the way I talk to myself, like I have a much less self-loathing these days than I did. Like, everything, it always rears its head, and it's not, I don't feel like you get like, this is done, right? But when something peaks in like that, I feel like it has a much shorter shelf life because you realize it is not very loving. There's no acceptance there, and it's ultimately it's not productive. What's productive is like taking action on whatever the thing is. So like I just feel like whenever, like, even like if it's like fitness, health, and you're just like, you fucking piece of shit sitting around doing nothing, look at this fucking gut or whatever it is, that it doesn't really, I could sit in that if I wanted to, and I have before for a long time, but it's just like, no, it's like today, now, let's go, right? Like, whether it's what you're eating or let's go train, you just feel like, even with like creative things, you get in these like self-loathing kind of ruts also about like what your productivity is, whether you're writing a script or you're on stage. But sitting in that, you just realize you just fall deeper into it, and you don't do anything. The older you get, the more you just realize the only solution for this feeling is just action. So like what I just do in those moments when I feel that is I open my laptop, or I get a pen, or I just get on stage and I go, I'm forcing myself, even if this fucking bombs, like, I don't want to sit in that feeling of like, I suck. And also like, I wouldn't do it to you, right? Like if you were like, I suck, I wouldn't be like, you do suck, man. Like, you should just sit here and do nothing. I would be like, get up, let's go. Let's go do something. Let's go train, whatever. Let's work on a project. Like, so you just learn, I think, with age and experience, that action is like, it really is the big solve. That's the one thing I would tell. I told you I don't like to advise like young artists, and I really don't. But the one thing I would feel comfortable telling them is like, doing something is the way to getting where you want to go. I don't care if you're a painter or a writer or an actor or a comedian. Like, you're not going to achieve any of that by sitting here and feeling bad about yourself. Go ahead if you want to, but the way out of this is by doing the thing. You have to act.
Once upon a time, Tom Segura used to look like Bert Kreischer ate Tom Segura. But those days are gone because Tom took control of his health. And with Function, you can take control of yours without any of the guesswork. They run lab tests twice a year that monitor over 100 biomarkers. Their team of expert physicians then takes the data, puts it in a simple dashboard, and gives you insights and actionable recommendations to improve your health and lifespan. They track everything from your heart health to your hormone levels, thyroid function, and even nutrient deficiencies. They even screen for 50 types of cancer at stage 1, which is 5 times more data than you get from an annual physical. Getting your blood work done and analyzed like this would usually cost thousands, but with Function, it is only $500. Right now, you can bypass their waitlist and get the exact same blood panels that I get by going to the link in the description below or heading to functionhealth.com/modernwisdom. That's functionhealth.com/modernwisdom. Well, if you think that action really is the only thing that matters in the end, and what you're trying to achieve, presumably by calling yourself a piece of shit internally is motivating yourself to go and do the action. You go, okay, so what I think is independent of the action. So if I can just go and do the action, I don't need to make myself unnecessarily suffer beforehand. That's just an addiction to me always seeing me like the villain or like the loser or like the person that doesn't get anything done. And has there ever been a time when you've gone and done something without calling yourself a piece of shit for doing it? Yeah. Loads of times.
Sure.
All the time. You go and do stuff without first like fucking whipping yourself into submission.
Yeah.
Okay. So just try and continue to shortcut that calling yourself a piece of shit thing and just go straight to, I'm just going to do the thing. I'm just going to try and do the thing. And there's an idea around, there are so many people working so hard and achieving so little. And I think the same about the internal landscape of people's minds. There are so many people thinking so meanly about themselves and having so few outcomes from it. It's like, okay, so the reason you want to go and do something is presumably to make your life better. And in the process of trying to motivate yourself to go and do something to make your life better, you make your life fucking miserable. It's like you're sacrificing the thing that you want for the thing that's supposed to get the thing that you want. And then you realize, well, the more that I call myself a piece of shit, actually kind of doesn't really motivate me all that much. It's kind of like a toxic fuel that doesn't last that long. Maybe it gets me in a really, really bad situation and really, really like down on my health or whatever it is, or I'm young. You go, after a while, it's just habit and routine.
People get addicted to the suffering, right? And what you need to, what you try to get to is just, it's actually looking at that voice as almost like a sign you're passing on a highway. You just kind of look and you go like, oh yeah, there's that. Like, I think that's a place you want. And then hopefully one day it's not even there at all. It's in the past. But yeah, the longer you're in the cycle of being productive, the less that voice is there and the less it lasts. And the more you see it for what it is, which is like, it's a nuisance and it's an obstacle and
it's an enemy as well.
It's
not your friend.
It's not your friend.
Your mind's not your friend when it's doing that.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. But it is something that, again, like, I think so many people think that that's just them. You know what I mean? Like, they just go like, man, I'm the only one with these. Like, dude, it's, your therapist has those thoughts. Like, for real.
It's funny as well. A lot of people, I think, that maybe have those kinds of thoughts, have high goals for themselves, and they've probably maybe started to make some movement toward them. So you go, wow, so you believe that you have agency in the real world. You think that your efforts can cause an outcome to happen. And you know, the fact that you moved out of the house a little bit younger than most of your friends, or the fact that you changed that career that you didn't really like, or, you know, when you acquired that skill that you really, really wanted, why do you think that happened? It's like, well, because I worked at it. I worked really hard. You go, okay, so you're telling me that you and your agency can influence the world outside of you. Yes. Okay, you know the texture of your mind, you know the way that you think. Like, do you think that you have agency over everything? And then that's, for some reason, stops at the boundary of your skull.
Yeah.
So like the only thing that you actually do directly have agency over, which is what's happening inside of your mind, is the one place that you don't
feel like you're a victim.
Most helpless in there. And it's such a paradox, right? So people have even been able to save relationships. You know, my partner really wasn't sure that this was going to work, and I proved to them that this was the right thing, and now we're married and we're so happy and we're all the rest of it. Oh, what? So it's not even, like, you think that you have more agency over other people than you do over the way that you think.
It just shows you, like all this just makes me think about how complicated the human mind and experience is. It like, you know, when you go to, like, talk about like health and weight loss, right? There's so many people who you go like, do you know what to do? Like, do you know what to do it? And so many people are like, yeah, just eat this and do this. And you're like, so what is the holdup, right? Well, the holdup is that, sure, that formula is simple, but existing in the world and dealing with life and emotions and thoughts is not that simple. And so the execution of this plan, sometimes it just doesn't go as simply as it kind of should, right? Like being a human being is complicated. It just is. We have we're sophisticated minds and entities on this. It speaks to like what you were just saying. It's like, how can you have so much control over this situation, but not here. It's like, you know what I mean? How can you not know to eat some fucking chicken and go on a walk? It's like, well, you do, but it's just being here is more complicated than that. Yeah. It just is.
I remember you told this story about a friend of yours who got diagnosed with real late stage cancer. And he was like, I'm going to beat this. And you're like, dude,
yeah,
you tell that?
This was like, it's so insane. It was like my closest high school friend, and he came to see me do a show in Palm Beach. And I remember we went to a bar that was near the hotel, and we walked back to the hotel, and he was like, he's overweight. He was like really huffing and puffing, sweating. And I was like, God. I was like, I'm fat, but you're a fucking mess. Like, I was like, that was hard for you? Like, we just walked, like on a, no hill, just like straight down the street. It's like, all right, well, it is Florida, it's humid or whatever. And the next day, I think they spent the night and they were driving back. And so then the day after that, I was living in LA. I get back to LA, and another friend was like, oh, did you hear what happened? And I was like, hear what happened? What do you mean? Oh yeah, on their way back to their house, my friend's wife was like, I don't like the way you look or you're breathing, so we're just going to stop by the emergency room. And like kind of, convinced him to. They go to the emergency room, he gets x-rayed, he's got tumors everywhere. He's got stage 4 lung cancer. And it's like, and so this is how I find out on this call. And then, he goes immediately into treatment, right? And they're like, yeah, this is basically as bad as it can get. So his brother finds the specialist who treats this particular type of cancer in Indianapolis. He's doing like trips from like Florida to Indianapolis. I go visit him in the hospital, and this is like, I don't know, maybe a month has gone by or something. So he's deep into his chemo. He's bald. He's lost 80 pounds or something. And like, I'm like, everybody's face is kind of like, you can just read it. Doctors, spouse, friends, everyone's like, it's good that you're here, and you're like, yeah. And then he's just like, yeah, man, just doing this. And like, I'll beat this thing. And then maybe, by the way, in the summer we can go to this. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, oh, he's just like crazy, And I'm like, does he understand the gravity of this? And they're like, I mean, I think so. But I always told him, I go, I think you're dumb enough to think you can do this. And I actually remember that, like, when my uncle was like a world-renowned urologist. And when he got mesothelioma, I remember my dad being like, he's too smart. He knows how to read these charts. Like he's like, he knows he's going to die. He knows. There's just no, and I say it jokingly, but I feel like my friend was also like uninformed and determined, obviously, to just be like, yeah, I mean, I know this sucks and this treatment sucks, but I'll be fine. And like,
believe it.
And they consider him like in this field and especially with like in this specialty as like a true miracle.
And he did beat it.
Yeah. He's been in remission for, what is it now? Like 7 or more years. I forget how many years now. And he beat it, and like right away, by the way, he's like, he drinks, he fucking dips, he eats like shit. And you're like, like, didn't that scare you into a different lifestyle? He's like, huh? I'm like, you're fucking, he's got a watermelon head. So maybe there's just like air in there. I don't know. But yeah, no, he doesn't take like particularly good care of himself, which is it's further into like the conversation we're talking about, like how minds work. Is like, I remember when my dad, also I was at the same, I just realized this right now. I was at the same comedy club. This is more than 10 years ago. This is like closer to 15 years ago in Florida. And he came to a show and also didn't look good and was also breathing heavy.
Stop going to that comedy club.
I know, right?
It's killing people.
And my mom also made him go to the emergency room on the way home. And he had 98% blockage in his one of his arteries. So they did an emergency stent, right? Open up the artery, which is like fairly common, but obviously like if it's one of those things like if he didn't do that, he probably would have had a heart attack in the next whatever, couple of weeks or something. And like, I don't know, when he got out of the hospital, you know, you feel this relief at the time. And like the next time I called him, because we would talk like almost every day, I was like, where are you? He was like, I'm at McDonald's. And I'm like, didn't you just get an emergency stent put in like for your clogged arteries? Yeah, I know. And I'm just having a McMuffin. Like, what the fuck, man? And I'm like, don't you want to like, you know, go, oh, thank you for this new lease on life and eat differently? He's like, what? You're like, okay. Like people just are who they are, you know, in some cases. Like I would think, I don't know, maybe it's just like in like when I broke my fucking arm and tore my patellar tendon and I viewed like some of that was just like a catalyst of like, oh, I need to take better care of myself. So I guess it's just how you're wired, I guess, in a way, right? Where you're like, I don't want to be
to learn from experience.
So I guess I'm friends with stupid people. I don't know.
Magic.
Like, yeah, like, I don't know. I'm like, you don't want to start eating healthier because your arteries are clogged? And he was like, it's a McMuffin. I'm like, okay. My friend beats cancer. And you're like, how much tobacco are you consuming every day? He's like, I don't know. Like, you know, there's a correlation, right, to the thing that you narrowly beat and what you're doing every day. Yeah. Yeah.
Before we continue, I've tried pretty much every greens drink that I could find, trying to work out which one was best. And I came across AG1. They've stuck with it for years because it's literally the best. It's the most comprehensive, it's the most rigorously tested and best formulation. And if I found anything better, I would switch, but I haven't, which is why I still use it. And I got my parents to use it. I got my friends to use it. And I put it inside of my body every single day. This is NSF certified for sport, meaning that every batch is not only held to strict standards for heavy metals, but also is tested for 280 banned substances. One scoop of AG1 contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients, including a multivitamin, multimineral, pre- and probiotic, green superfood blend, and more that all work together to fill the nutritional gaps in your diet. It increases energy and focus, aids with digestion, and supports a healthy immune system, all without the need to take multiple products or pills. And if you're still unsure, they've got a 90-day money-back guarantee, so you can buy it and try it every single day for 3 months, and if you do not like it, they'll just give you your money back. Right now, you can get a year's free supply, vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs, plus that 90-day money-back guarantee by going to the link in the description below or heading to drinkag1.com/modernwisdom. That's drinkag1.com/modernwisdom. Have you ever seen the Midwit meme? Do you know what that is? Oh, dude. So imagine a bell curve. It's an IQ bell curve. And on the left-hand side, this sort of Neanderthal-looking meme guy with the heavy brow. And then in the middle, at the top, is the sort of raging lib guy. And then on the far side is the sage that's got his hood up, looking like a Jedi. Yeah. And the joke is that the guy on the left and the guy on the right always arrive at the same conclusion. And the guy in the middle tries to overcomplicate it. So we've spent, me and George, my friend, have spent, I'm not kidding, like months talking about this. He sent me another meme about it this morning. It's like I think it's the most philosophically important meme because let's say it's getting in shape.
Yeah.
Lift weights, eat protein. Lift weights, eat protein. I must ensure that my pre-digested whey is consumed within 30-minute window. Yeah. I have to make sure that my blue blockers are put on before, it's just the guy in the middle
ruins everything.
Is overcomplicating things.
Yeah.
And what you found is a bunch of people that are on the left. And here's the thing that people don't get about the Midwit meme. We've refined this over 1 million dinners. Every guy in the middle is a guy on the left trying to be the guy on the right.
That's for sure.
You can't be the guy on the right. It's impossible to be the guy on the right. The only thing you can be is the guy on the left.
And some people just don't know they're the guy on the left. Some people are aware.
Precisely correct. Yeah. Precisely correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's some people who are naturally gifted with that. Now they've got some challenges too, that maybe they're going to get hit by things that they didn't quite see.
Yeah.
You know, rolling the dice and having these sorts of stories where like the miraculous recovery because of this guy's his inability to realize how ridiculous his goals are because he's not trying to be the guy on the right and ending up being the guy in the middle. He's like, I'm going to beat this thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't be the guy on the right. You can only be the guy on the left. So what you're trying to cultivate, it's like cultivated stupidity is the best you can hope for. If you're not gifted with it, if you're not gifted with you got the natural stupidity, congratulations.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't have that, it's like you just need to be, okay, I'm going to default to being the simple thing, not trying to be the over complex thing, which ends up being the simple thing anyway. But what you end up doing is just being stuck in the middle.
You don't want to be the loud, dumb guy. Just be dumb and quiet, basically. Like nothing worse than the most ignorant people are always like yelling about it. And you're just like, man, you don't want to have to be like that. Do you ever think, because another bell curve thing, I forgot who brought this to my attention, was the idea that, there's the average IQ is like 100. And then you think of like people with developmental issues who are, let's say technically under 70, right? It's like, and you kind of go like, oh yeah, average is it. But then you go like, do you realize how many people are 90, 80, 75? Like, it's not a couple. It's millions and millions. For that to be the average, that like you're surrounded by a lot of noise from people that are barely putting sentences together, and if you stop and have enough conversations, you'll figure it out. Like there's a lot of nonsense that you should ignore, and they have a voice too. And the best thing you can do is tune them out. Like seriously, there's like, yeah, I mean, you might not be on the far other side of that equation where you're not 140 or something, but if you're even just lucky enough to be blessed with the average or slightly around there's a lot of people you should not be listening to.
There's a really interesting stat that guys in high school who have got IQs of 70 are more likely to not be virgins than guys in high school who've got IQs of 130.
Well, like stupid people only know how to fuck. That is kind of a thing, right? I mean, I've been to those countries and they're underdeveloped and that's what their whole currency is. They're just like, I fuck. So it's not crazy to me they have their own showering system. There's a lot of sand. But dumb people, if you ask a lot of chicks, like, who is the best fuck of your life? They're going to be like, it was a dumb guy. That guy was a machine.
Didn't overcomplicate it.
He just got in there and knew what to do. And like, that's his, if you're dumb, I mean, that might be like the thing you're best at, because it feels good. It's like, it's this dumb equation. You're like, touch this, it feels good. That makes sense to them. I feel like they're not introspective. They're not going to have any,
well, they don't get in their own head about it, right? They're not the urologist reading his sheets.
No.
They're just in the moment.
They're just in the moment and they just go.
The guy on the left is the best fuck in the world. Who knew?
He definitely is.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the guy on the far right.
No.
Well,
yeah, I don't know. The idea of trying to be a little bit more simplistic. And another perfect example of this, in Atomic Habits by James Clear, he talks, I think it's like the head of the Chinese weightlifting team, and they're super advanced. They're getting these kids from like 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
It's a religion, weightlifting in China. And he asked, what is the difference between the guys who are world champions and the rest of the elite? And he said, the guys that are world champions are prepared to come in and do the boring things without complaining and realizing that it's not supposed to be there. It's like, oh, okay. So if you have this cultivated stupidity where you can say, look, this is going to suck, and I shouldn't rail against the fact that it sucks. Matt Fraser, who won the CrossFit Games 5-6 times in a row, he did an engineering degree, and there's a story in Chasing Excellence by Ben Bergeron where he says, he would memorize his entire engineering textbook page for page, and if he got one word wrong, he'd go back to the start and do it again. So this guy, basically, very, very smart, very, very driven. But then he had to have this cultivated stupidity thing. If you're going to go and do monostructural work on a rowing machine or a ski erg or a air runner or whatever, you need to go in and go, this is going to be 90 minutes at 140 BPM. It's the zone 2E boring. It's the most boring thing. It's not even going to give me the satisfaction of feeling like I've worked.
Yeah.
Like I've got to just sit.
But I know that it's going to help my steady state kind of, conditioning improve.
Go slow to go fast.
And so like, it's kind of back to the thing though, that like those elite athletes are either so smart that they know
to be the guy on the left.
Yeah.
Or they are the guy on the left.
Who just goes, show up and do it.
This
feels good.
The fucking Midwit meme is undefeated. But I mean, that's why I find it interesting when sports stars get criticized for boring or basic post-match interviews.
I do too.
I feel like what did you expect?
Yeah, and also he didn't sign up to be a great interview. He or she, like that's not part of that. You're making that. You're putting that on them, that they have to be fantastic and charismatic.
Because you're using your own barometer for what you consider to be successful as a non-elite athlete.
Yeah. This person is just fucking hitting forehands and backhands. That's what they're supposed to be good at.
Lift weights, hit ball.
That's it. And like they did it well. So like whatever comes after that is like, you're projecting onto them. Oh, I can't believe that they said this or they had an attitude. Why? Like, or that they didn't give like an eloquent answer. Like this person's supposed to be a philosopher. It's like it's a fucking Neanderthal half the time.
For every Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, there's like 200 guys on the left. Like someone that I've thought really deeply about this. I understand exactly what it means to me, etc., etc. Tell you one sport that actually feels like that's not the case, where everybody is the guy on the right. Formula One. I don't see many of the drivers in Formula One. Dean, is anybody in Formula One? Is Dean here? Anyone in Formula One the guy on the left? Is there any like Neanderthal, super simple, like drive car fast, go sideways people? Danny Ricciardo, maybe, but he's more like the party guy on the left. He's like the guy on the left, but in a party hat. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You like Danny,
Danny is, though, he's a pretty nuanced thinker. Like he has this persona of like, because he is like fun, all that, but then you sit with him and you talk and you realize, these guys are all.
Oh fuck! You went to that. That's where you met Zach at that party. Right? When you were at some F1 party, was that not something to do with Danny Ricciardo? Was it last year or the year before?
Yeah. I'd met Danny in Australia at his place. I went to and then when he had his party, that's right, Zach was at that thing here.
Yeah, and everyone accused him of being Pedro Pascal from Wish.
That's right.
On Instagram.
I mean,
he looks a lot like fucking Pedro Pascal.
He still does. It's not a bad thing, man. He's got a good thing going on. I thought the new hair was for a new part. I was like, what are you in?
Yep. Yeah.
No, but you're right. Those guys they're pretty bright. They're pretty bright guys. Maybe there's some correlation between high performance driving and you can't be a box of rocks.
There's certain things that are so technical.
Yeah.
I would imagine, for instance, golf. I don't know golf, but I would imagine that it's probably pretty difficult to be a golfer and also be the guy on the left because
a high level one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because and most of the time, well, I guess there's other factors. Most of the time when you see most PGA people had a certain upbringing. They're usually well-educated. That sport is usually associated with a certain socioeconomic level. I mean, it obviously there's people who have started elsewhere, but for the most part, you find it in well-to-do, environments and people who have a certain level of education. But you're right. There's not a lot of, I don't know, like back nine.
I've thought this through really carefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the difference. If you were to go, I'm going to NASCAR at COTA in a couple of weeks' time. So please don't take this the wrong way. I don't imagine that the NASCAR drivers have quite the same mentality that the Formula One drivers do. I imagine that you could get some more guys on the left in NASCAR, despite the fact that it's probably a very similar sort of sport.
Yes, that's 100% true, for sure. Yeah, I mean, the Formula One guys, for the most part, are more sophisticated. Yeah,
dialed.
But also, I mean, there's definitely some really bright people who've done the NASCAR, and then there's some people who just go like,
foot down, turn left.
Down, just hold on, baby. Yeah. That's definitely true. And then, like, I think you find more guys on the left if you're talking about violent sports too, right? So,
100%.
like,
no one's going to Nate Diaz for like his sort of deep philosophical insights about stuff, but holy fuck,
yeah,
he is going to annihilate you. And there's that. I've heard these stories about his and his brothers, like they do triathlons and sort of this endurance racing thing, their ability to put their head down.
I don't like, that's one that you're drawn to do things that you naturally have some skill at, right? Or it feels good to do. And then you reject things where you're like, I'm not good at this and I don't like this. Like with sport, right? Like you just always are like doing the things you have some skill at and you're like, I don't like this other thing. These fucking ultra marathon people, like part of it I realize is that like it's just not in me, and I don't even understand this mental aspect. And I've talked to a few. I'm just like, I don't understand how you're doing this 150-mile horrible idea. Like how? But like that just speaks to like, it's again, I feel like you want to be the guy on the left for that. You don't want to have as much awareness.
There's certain sports where it's a real competitive advantage. There's this kid called Ned Brockman out of Australia. So when I did my tour over there, I had him on the show. He ran 1,000 kilometers or 1,000 miles around a track. And it took him just over a week. And his shins were just torn apart, and he's got shaved on top, like the classic Aussie, like real Aussie mullet, not one of these trendy wanky Austin things, where there's like a bit of hair up top to make it balanced.
Yeah,
it's like Theo Von, basically. And he did that. He ran across Australia. He tried to break the record for running across Australia. And you speak to him in particular, and you're like, I was trying to find the Goggins ancestral trauma void inside of him.
Sure.
I'm like, oh, you're just doing this because you like the thrill of it. Like you're just doing this because run far, feel good. And it's I wonder how people can kind of get out of their own head. So a lot of the different things that we've touched on to do with the self-loathing, the criticism, that internal voice, all of those things are putting limits on your self-belief and your capacity, and they're making you think, well, maybe you can't do that, or maybe you shouldn't do that, or maybe in the pursuit of even doing that, you should hate yourself a little bit more. And I'm like, okay, how can I want to work out how to cultivate, or how people that are intrinsic overthinkers can create a little bit more cultivated stupidity. I think that would be like, I don't know, hit everyone on the head, fucking microdose of mushrooms, smoke weed on them all. I don't know.
No, I think we all have this thing where we can overthink. You can make, like, I remember talking to someone about it, like, for instance, production. When you go, I'm going to shoot something, you can always find reasons to not do the thing. Well, this is just going to be, it's going to be a night shoot, or it's going to cost this, or I don't know if we're going to get the right sound person, and the makeup is not going to, like, you can just find reasons to not do things. I guess it goes back for me to just, whether you're underthinking, overthinking, just take action in any, you know what I mean? So like overthinking that production thing is something that happens to so many people. Like I'm using the example of production, but this just happens for like whatever thing they want to do.
Career change.
Yeah, career change, or like even something
talk to that girl.
Pleasurable. Yeah, talk to the girl, go on a trip. We're going to go skiing. And then you're like, I don't know if I have the goggles and I have to go get them. And you're like, dude, like we talk ourselves out of a lot of things, whether it's like production, pleasure. It's honestly, all these things are just like, it's life. It's like, it's being in the game. Like people, you want to be in the game, right? Whether it's like in work or in your own love life or whatever, you don't want to be on the side. You don't want to be, not to like pile on, but you don't want to be one of the lonely people. And those people, there's a lot of reasons where someone could end up in that situation, but one of them is definitely they're talking themselves out of things, talking themselves out of engaging.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, there's a vicious spiral. You sort of touched on it earlier on, that when you've got good habits, they feed you good habits, and then you believe in yourself more. But the same thing happens in reverse.
Yes.
And it's such I understand why people on the internet rail against anybody that appears to have had runaway success, because they go, if you're not that, if you're using the same dynamic, but in reverse, which is you've got runaway failure, that fucking sucks. And I've been there. I've been in I just continue, I reliably faceplant every single thing that I try to do, from the smallest to the biggest, and I need to use I don't know how to do it, but I need to like rip this 10-ton gorilla off the floor attached to a barbell. I need to like find a way to reverse this momentum.
Yeah.
And then when you're on the other side of it, you almost have this sense of like survivor guilt, like retrospect, like, oh, holy fuck. This is me feeling the win that was the loss of.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with this guy, William von Hippel, fascinating anthropologist, evolutionary psychologist, yesterday. He was telling me about how two fundamental needs that humans have. One is autonomy and the other one is connection. And the thing is, if you've got a hierarchy, everybody needs connection. And his belief is fundamentally that's what everybody's after. They want to be warm, they want to be friendly, they want to be valued. The weird thing is, in order to be valued, autonomy allows you to build up some of that, some of the capacities. So you need to be selfish. You need to go, if you're good at comedy, there is a degree of connection you've had to sacrifice to do that, because you don't do comedy in union with your wife or in union with your friends or whatever. You have to spend a lot of time. If you're Steph Curry and you shoot 3,500 three-pointers in training, I know that you've had to sacrifice some connection in order to be able to build up that autonomy, right? And the autonomy then creates this like capability. People value the capability thing, but what they really, really want is the connection. So there's this fascinating bit of research that shows that people who are more competent are seen as colder, regardless of how friendly they are. And people who are more incompetent are seen as more warm and friendly, regardless of how warm and friendly they are. And there's this sense that, I sort of infer from someone's capabilities and whether or not they're smart or successful or whatever. Hey, you're not very pro-social. Yeah. Because if you're rich or you've achieved status or you've done a thing, you've lost all of this weight. Adele, like you've lost all of this weight. There's this bit in the back of our mind that kind of knows, like you were selfish for a while. Like you had to work on you. You had to be selfish for a while. Whereas you don't have the same in the opposite direction. I thought that was so interesting, this sort of tension between competence and warmth, and the fact that we see them as opposed to each other. Competent people are seen as cold and incompetent people are seen as warm.
That is, and as you said it, I was just nodding along because it feels like one of those things where you realize it's kind of automatic. Like it's like, you know, the test where they say that, and they use every like psychology 101 department does this, where they have the person carry the books and they drop them in front of, and they have an attractive person do it. Everyone's like, hey, here you go. Like it's automatic. It's in your brain. And then people are colder, or I would say more inviting and warm and wanting to be helpful to not to attractive people. That's another thing that's just like automatic. Like if you're in somebody's like lost and you just go, yeah, but like the competency is really interesting, because I'd never actually heard it. It's one of those things where it's like in stand-up when somebody articulates a thing that's always been there and you go like, no one's ever fucking said it. But it's interesting that we do have, like you feel naturally warmer to somebody, like somebody can't figure something out. I guess that's kind of like in a way that's a good thing, where you go, let me embrace this, like help. You want to help the person who is seemingly incompetent, at least to a degree, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, but then there's a point of frustration with that too.
Fuck, God damn it.
But the more interesting thing is the other side of it. The fact that you would have a perception that a highly competent person is just cold.
Yeah. Well, the other, Trump's kind of maybe an interesting example around it. I mean, you could argue about his level of competence, but he's not stupid.
No.
And I wonder whether a little bit of it is, if somebody is really competent, there's this sense in the back of your mind where you go, are they really being themselves? Is this them, or is this some sort of subterfuge act thing that they're
putting
trying
me on right now? Yeah.
Secret squirrel society me and fugazi me. Whereas I look at a bunch of different people, whether it's in sport, whether it's in entertainment, the sort of simple, lovable oaf type character.
Yeah.
There is this sense of warmth to them, because you go, hey, he might make some errors, but he owns those errors, and they're from the heart. They're errors that are kind of like a natural outgrowth. They're not manipulative. They're not being done for some particular reason.
Which speaks to fear, though, right? Because what the thing is you're less scared of that oaf. You're more scared of the very intelligent person. It's always been this way. Somebody who's like highly intelligent, part of your brain just goes, what's this person capable of doing to me?
Mm-hmm.
That's really at the root of what you're feeling. Mm-hmm. You're feeling that this highly intelligent person is either going to want to like pull something over on you. They're going to get you to do something you didn't want to do.
Use this information against me.
Yeah.
What should I tell them?
That's exactly what your brain's doing. It's protecting itself. The oaf, the lovable oaf, you don't have to worry about that. Your guard goes down completely. You go, this is like a puppy, like there's nothing going on behind this person's eyes that I can't pick up on. This person just wants to, whatever they say is what they want. And so like, that's the thing, is that we're just kind of protecting ourselves with the highly competent person.
Well, I guess one of the interesting areas of this is lots of people that listen to podcasts they're the endemic overthinkers. They're the people that are trying to learn more about the world, and they're spending time doing that. Even now, as it seems like the podcast election and it's like, I think only about 50% of Americans listen to a podcast once a month. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the power users that listen to them multiple hours per day. But you think, okay, so you're probably...
Do you listen to podcasts?
I do.
You do?
I do, yeah. It's changed. My listening habits have changed a lot since doing the show. And I think in order to kind of be fresh, there's an amount of exposure that you need to limit yourself to.
Yeah.
Or else you end up being too heavily influenced. I imagine that watching other comics is probably like this as well.
Yeah, you really just want to the thing is, I get so much anxiety watching, this sounds like bad, but like just watching somebody I only want to watch really good comics in person. So like if somebody's really good, I want to watch that. If they're not, I don't want to watch.
Why?
It's just, I think you're feeling... all those things, the feelings of trying to figure it out and the insecurities and also there's tired bits and like there's, like you're watching a 7-year guy. You're like, this is like the best version of this is not great anyway. So you don't want to.
What's a 7-year guy?
Like a guy who's been doing it just like, he's still in like this development phase. Mm-hmm. And so you just go like, it just makes me, I just don't want to be around it. I want to watch like high level people. I want to watch because it's really good. It is inspiring. It makes you go like, fuck, like, shit, I need to write more. Like those are the people I want to watch, which, I mean, that's my own thing, right? Like, but I also know a lot of people like that. Like I can't stand in the back of the room and just watch us like person after person go up who's like fledgling and trying to figure it out.
Oh, that's Kill Tony. That is what Kill Tony is for a
Kill Tony is, well,
but you've got a release valve. The difference with that is you've got a pressure release valve.
True.
So I wonder, totally bro sciencing this, pulling it out of my arse. This has to be the same, I would guess, if you were a musician, watching a musician not perform particularly well on stage, like continually miss notes and do other bits. Mm-hmm. In fact, I know that this is the case. I know that this is the case firsthand from being in Jamaica recently. I wonder whether there's a bit of it where you're starting to tune your own nervous system to like this sensation that you're working really, really, really hard to avoid. You're watching this person do the thing that you do and going, I'm feeling, I've got this PTSD.
Yeah, it is. There's definitely PTSD. Part of this is
bringing it back into me. I've worked really hard to get rid of that. Exactly. I don't want that in my world.
Exactly. No, that's definitely happening. It's definitely happening. It's triggering hundreds and thousands of like
bad memories.
Yeah, and you just are like, and you can just see like you see all of a sudden you see these micro movements of like, oh, I see that discomfort. I see where this is going. I know what this this is just, this is bad. I want to leave. So I want to literally leave the room. And then if you tell me like somebody's on stage who you go, this person's really good. I want to watch that. That feels good. It actually relaxes me. Like I feel
how
relaxed.
well it could go.
Yes. Yeah. It relaxes me.
I wonder what the sort of common lesson is there, or what the sort of rule is there to try and spend time watching people.
But you're right on Kill Tony though, in that in those people are doing like a minute, and that anxiety in me can build high in that minute. I mean, I've sat up there where I'm like, and then you're fucking waiting for that cat to meow, and you're like, oh, thank God. Like, just, yeah, there's a very uncomfortable feeling. People, we don't all react to it the same way, I think, though, but for a comedian who's done it, yeah, you start to feel what they're feeling. Yeah.
It's such an emotional area. Yeah. I really do think that that cultivated stupidity thing, and trying to simplify down, trying to not hold yourself to too high standards, but just realize that the outcome that you're trying to achieve only really depends on the actions that you're going to take. And all of this fuckery that you've got going in, all of the stories that you tell yourself, all of the ruminate, all of the fear of the conversation, all of the concern about whether should I be assertive, but then what they're going to say. So I had this really lovely question on a Q&A last week that said, I know that I deserve more, but I'm really terrified to ask for it. I didn't specify what the situation was. Maybe something at work, maybe something in a relationship, maybe something with family or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I know that I deserve more, but I'm really scared of asking for it. It's like, what an odd but totally relatable
thing
situation to be in. It's like, I know that this is something that I'm allowed, that I can have, that I should have, and they probably know too. And I'm in my head about all of this. The same thing goes for your pursuits, your professional life, your personal life, all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's an extremely universal question, right? And I mean, my immediate thought is like, I can't help but think about like actually in entertainment, like in what I do, is that you come into it feeling like that. You're like, I want these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have representation, but you view representation as like mom and dad, which is not how you're supposed to do it.
How so?
Because you're young and you go like, can I? Is it okay? Would you approve of me? Do you think I can? And then it cultivates this relationship. A lot of young actors and comedians have this like kind of twisted relationship with their first reps. Right. Which is why a lot of times people hit the next phase in their life and they change if they can, because they need a relationship that's more equal, as opposed to like this weird power dynamic.
Balance.
Yeah. That's not supposed to really be there, because it's like with the woman, you go like, but I don't feel like I should say to that person. It's like, there's certain people you just feel like you can't say the thing to, which is fine. I think that's a normal thing. You need to then switch the person that you're talking to that you can speak like that to. And that's what happens a lot in our field, I would say, like that people want to ask for things and they're scared to. I was like, well, then you need to change who you're asking. I mean, obviously you need to get to the point where you feel like you can ask for these things, but sometimes you just don't feel like you can say certain things to certain people.
What have you learned about human psychology through this recent obsession with true crime?
Mine?
Mm-hmm.
Recent? I mean, 40 years?
Vestigial, long time. Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like crime and, behaviors of criminals I don't understand how somebody is not fascinated by how other human beings can act. I think there's something about crime in and of itself that is so accessible that's part of. In other words, you can go into the bank and rob it. You've gone in there before, but I'm fascinated by the fact that somebody does that, right? Like, I was just there, I'm in line, I see what they're seeing, but like the fact that they do that is, everyone's felt rage. Everyone's like, I could kill this fucking whatever
driver on the road.
Yeah, the salesperson, driver, or whatever, but you just don't. And then the rage thing, I guess everybody understands how you could trip over rage, but then when you realize that some people are calculated and they are getting their thrill out of doing that, it's just a fascinating aspect of, I think, the human experience, that there's somebody that's the same. The reason I have fascination with dictators and how they can, you see certain similarities between people that commit violent crimes and certain people that are super highly malignant narcissists that run a country. But it's just like a study. For me, it's like the study in how somebody becomes that is what's fascinating. So like you do see parallels sometimes, and then sometimes you don't. And so in other words, like, there's neglect, there's abuse, there's trauma, and a lot of people that commit horrible acts of violence, but sometimes there isn't. And I mean, I guess for me, I don't know. It's like I have always had that curiosity about those stories because I like the story. I like learning about what somebody did, and I really love learning about how somebody gets caught. I mean, those are like, there's a whole genre of books and films just about these topics, obviously. And like this reminds me of my wife's like, I can't believe you're watching this. I'm like, you think they made this for me? Like, you think there's one guy watching this? This is a fucking #1 show right now. Like these are fascinating stories. But I think the reason they're fascinating is because it's right there. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're here and you're like, there's someone who's just like dialed 2 degrees this way and they're doing this.
So much of them are so similar and the behaviors so different.
Yeah. And then, I mean, like, yes, I mean, some of it is that I think when you hear some of these stories, you feel fear or you feel a rush or, sometimes, I mean, look, there's even stories that repel you. Like there's a variety of them. Like there's stories that I gotta start learning about. I don't want to learn any more about this. Yep. It just depends on the actual story. But yeah, I can deeply
house a true crime story.
Yeah. I like documentaries. I like the limited series on all these things. I watch a lot of them. Yeah.
I had Marissa Harrison on. She's the world expert in female serial killers.
Mm-hmm.
She's had a new book out called Just as Deadly. And only 1 in 6 serial killers are women, but because of the ways that they kill, it's way less newsworthy. So sure. A lot of this are nurses looking after babies and infants, carers looking after old people or disabled people that have got mental disorders, stuff like that. Some of them are what they called angel of death, mercy killing type things, but they feel like that's gonna skew because if you keep doing it over and over, it's actually for the thrill. The methods are totally different as well. That a lot of the time it's poison, it's sort of surreptitious ways. It's not like, and that makes it way less newsworthy as well. If there's like an axe and a lot of blood everywhere, that's a pretty big story.
Like, oh my God, yeah.
Another infant dies in a ventilator or something. It's like, we don't really too know. But I know exactly what you mean. This sense that this person's really similar to me, and yet their outcomes in life have been really different to me, and the way that they behave has been so different to me. Why? What is it about that?
Why? And how does it get here? Like, what's the story? And then how did they move from this to that? I mean, it's like why people always talk about like the worst dictators as like monsters. And then you just kind of get used to that term, but you're like, yeah, but they're not. You know what I mean? Like, sure, their acts are, what they did was horrible. You just remember that it's just like another dude. Yeah. Like he's just a guy and he was capable of this. And I want to get like to the real story of how this person.
Why?
Yeah.
There's a great example that Sam Harris uses about Uday Hussein, Saddam Hussein's son, goes on to be a pretty bad guy.
Yeah. Kind of a knucklehead. Yeah.
But you say, okay, so imagine that you're 3-year-old Uday Hussein and you're maybe squashing bugs in the backyard, but you've grown up in this sort of crazy honor culture. You've got the genetics of a literal fucking war criminal. You've got this sort of very odd reinforcement mechanism because everybody's bowing down to you and your family and no one's telling you that you can't do anything, and you're watching your dad and do all of these things, and maybe there's a harem or whatever the fuck. You go, okay, now you're 7 years old and you're bullying the kids in the schoolyard. Now you're 15 years old and you go, like, at what point does that person kind of become the architect of themselves? You go, well, I don't really know, but it's an interesting question to think, like, from before the moment you were born, from the moment that you were conceived, your behavior was being shaped in this way. And then this interaction between the raw materials that you were made of and the environment that you were put in, especially given that the environment you're put in is usually the same one that created the materials. So there's this sort of, 2 times boost multiplier effect thing going on, because you've got the aggressive genes and you're raised in an aggressive household, which means, that's the way that I deal with my anger or whatever it might be. I've got the suppress the emotions down gene, and I saw my dad always suppress the emotions down, so I thought I never need to assert myself.
You're going to do it. I mean, he and his brother, Uday, and forget his brother's name, but they would pull people out of traffic. Like if you like honked at them, Baghdad, they would just rip you out of the car, fucking either kill you or just beat you, throw you in a trunk. They ran around that place like it was all theirs, because it was. They would fuck people up, did whatever they want. So yeah, if you're born into that environment and you have like anything you want to do is signed off on. Like there is no accountability. It's not gonna create this loving spirit that, you know what I mean? Like it's gonna.
What did you expect him to?
Yeah, it's gonna bring out the worst in you. Yeah, those guys, I don't think they ever had a chance with being born into that in there with their father being who he was. There was never a chance those guys were gonna be good, chill dudes.
Who have you been fascinated by mostly in true crime recently?
Let's see. What did I most recently watch? I mean, I'm listening to the Real Dictators podcast, and I'm learning about Varela right now, one of the Argentine dictators or generals that became a dictator. And then I've been watching. I mean, I watched a bunch of the series. Like the thing that was fascinating to me about I was saying this to I had Susan Hendricks on, the CNN crime reporter, is we were discussing how, like, when you watch the documentaries now about like famous cases that you grew up with, part of your brain goes, yeah, I already know that story. And then you watch these and you're like, oh, I don't remember A, any of this, or B, I didn't even had any idea about any of these details. Nothing. Like, I remember when I watched the Lacey Peterson one, the Scott Peterson one, I just had like, I was like, oh yeah. I mean, I remember like vaguely this detail, or like the Menendez brothers. I was like, yeah, they shot their parents. I didn't have any recollection about the abuse that they went allegedly through at the hands of their father. I had no recollection about that. I really didn't know the fact that like their father was so loathed by everybody he had ever interacted with that they couldn't even provide a character witness at the trial for him to speak on his behalf, on a guy that was murdered, who had, seemingly relationships with people he had worked with, and in his person, not one person would be like, yeah, this was a good guy. Like details like that really start to shape the story in your mind a little differently. I had forgotten. I could not believe, because they had the interrogation footage of Scott Peterson, just how crazy cold that guy was and how casual he was. Like, yeah, this is like the day they pull him in and she's missing. He's like, I went fishing and like came back. The dog was barking, and I hope you find her. And you're like, wow. Because what's interesting to me in that story is that the person is sure cold enough and calculated enough to do this, but they're so removed from how they should be behaving in that situation. You're like, oh, you can't even, like, he couldn't even either lack the awareness or couldn't even pretend to be somebody.
Well, I always think about that. I mean, everybody has imagined, how am I going to behave? What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And your nervous system is just on fucking fire.
Yeah.
Like, it's just I would love, I mean, this would obviously never happen, but I would love for Huberman or someone to get in and tap their cortisol and their adrenaline.
You see
like, what is going on under the hood, because that would, everything, all you're hearing is just this ringing in your ears. You've had the same thoughts over and over and over again. You're watching the interrogator, seeing what they're saying, thinking, what should I say here? You're 4 steps removed from being in the room.
Yeah.
You know, you're thinking about how you should act based on what you know that the interrogator thinks about what you should be doing if you were the person that did the...
There's too many hoops you're going through.
So but this is the other thing where, you know, the Madeleine McCann case?
Yeah.
Yeah, so missing girl, 3-year-old girl, I think from Portugal in the 90s, British girl who was there on holiday. And one of the criticisms that her parents had, one of the criticisms lodged against her parents was that on the press tour, they didn't seem like they were behaving like grieving parents would.
Yes.
And you go... So I get that, and in some situations that might be an indication of guilt, but also, what does a grieving parent that's faced with an entire press corps behave? What is normal in that situation?
Same Jean Bonnet criticism, and it really made me think about, did you watch American Nightmare?
No.
So this is one of the most...
Is that the one next door? No, that was Murder Next Door. I saw that one.
Yeah, that's a different one.
Yep.
Or Into the Fire. That one's fucking... That's really crazy. But American Nightmare, the most fascinating aspect of the story to me, which I don't know how to tell it without like giving too much, but like the most fascinating aspect is that on episode 1, this guy he's telling you as the interviewer, but they go to the interrogation footage, he's telling the police of what just happened, which is that he was with his girlfriend and somebody came in and tied them up, gave them like something to drink.
Oh, I have seen this. Yes.
And kidnapped her, right? And you're watching this and you're like, this guy is full of shit. Like something is off. He is not speaking to the police
in the way that he should.
His emotions are not reading the way that I know they should. The second episode begins and they're talking to the woman. And you're seeing her in the interrogation and you're still like, yeah, this is not. And then when you get through the story, you're like, oh, they were both telling the truth. And I'm sorry, I just ruined it for everybody. But that was like I was like, that was the thing that threw me the most. Mm-hmm. Was like, no, I know how you're supposed to behave in a truthful way. And this is not that. So this is not truthful. And then you're like, wait a minute, this was truthful. And that to me was like, the most, I still couldn't get over it. The way that he was talking about what had just happened. I was like, I understood actually why the police were like, it's
you, dude.
Yeah. What the fuck? And the same thing with the girl. They're like, well, she's full of shit. This is not, it's like the party. And they seem like they're seemingly normal. Like they're nice people. At least they come across this way when you see them like in the moment now telling the story, but you're like, the fuck was going on? And maybe is what's going on is what you were saying, is that their systems were so
fucking far in their head. So there's this really interesting idea called the Keynesian beauty contest. So in a Keynesian beauty contest, you're not asked to pick which is the most beautiful model. It's an imaginary beauty contest. You're not asked to pick out of 10 which you think is the most beautiful. You're asked to pick which you think the other judges will pick as the most beautiful model.
Oh, yeah.
So rather than choosing your own opinion, you're trying to outsource this sort of fake consensus using theory of mind to all of the other people that are in the room. And I always think about that Keynesian beauty contest thing in situations like this, because there will be a sense in the back of these people's minds, except for the person that's so stricken and sort of taken by their emotions that all of that second, third, fourth order processing is just like fucked off out of the room. But there will be people that are like, I bet they think it's me. How can I make sure that they don't think it's me? God, I'm so sad that this thing happened. I'm so traumatized from this thing. They think it's me. It's like just bouncing around. You go, okay, how do you get yourself? You're trying to be the normal, both guilty and innocent.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be the version of me that I think they would want to see if I wasn't guilty. And by doing that, I'm getting in the way of being the unencumbered version. It's the same as watching the stand-up person on stage. It's like, I'm trying to be a stand-up comic that isn't nervous and isn't bumbling through his lines.
Exactly.
Therefore, I am
So I don't want to watch it.
Yeah,
you're right. You go, whatever that person's doing is not why. I want to watch the person who feels control and is like, confident, whatever. Like at ease. Yeah, at ease. I want to see that. And it's true. What's funny is that like you, with the Scott Peterson example, you automatically go, right, but this person jumping through hoops because they're lying and they want you to not know that they're lying. With the other one, what's so interesting is that he's telling the truth, but he's probably like, I hope you believe that I'm telling the truth, because I am telling the truth. And I don't know how to, because what you do is you think about times where you realize someone has thought, are you telling the truth? And you're trying to convey, no, I am.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what really happened. And you can see doubt in their face. Yeah. Like you can see them.
So you lean into this weird, there's a fascinating insight around guilt. So this fucking broke my brain when I realized this. Our level of guilt is directly proportional to the likelihood that we think that we're going to get caught. So if you've ever noticed that you do a small indiscretion that you know that no one will find out about, you're way less guilty about it than if you do a larger indiscretion that you think you're going to get caught for. So it's like an early warning system that like, maybe you should behave in a slightly different way, or maybe you should own up to this before you get found out. But if you like, no one's around, it's late at night, you toss a Coke can out of the window, it's like, I don't feel that guilty. You toss a Coke can in front of a family that's walking past and it's the stroller's about to roll over the top of it, you're like, holy fuck, like they know that
it's going to sit with you. Yeah.
Yeah, so guilt being in proximity to your likelihood of being caught is this early warning signal. I always think about that.
Is that like a scientifically studied thing?
It's a posited theory. I mean, you could observe it, but evolutionary psychology suggests that this would be one of the mechanisms by which
it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, we just see it in ourselves, right? You can observe it within yourself. It doesn't necessarily need to be a law. It's just something that you can notice. But yeah, I always think about like going back to times when I felt really, really guilty. I'm like, yeah, I was pretty sure that someone was going to find out about the thing that I did.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And but like people who commit some of these heinous crimes, you know, they're not going to feel guilt one way or the other. But it's interesting that like maybe somebody who doesn't have that personality disorder, that guilt shows itself if they start to feel the likelihood that they're going to get caught.
Well, think about what we were saying earlier on, that the lovable oaf type thing, it feels less threatening to us. In a way, I wonder whether the person who makes killings out of rage feels less threatening to us than the cold, calculated killer who's detached from it. Because you go, okay, well, if they're not in rage, if I don't enrage them, I'm sweet.
Also, we all can relate.
We've all been enraged.
We've all been enraged. Yeah. So that's a big factor there.
Very few of us
relatable.
Have been Dexter. Yeah. With the scalpel and, you know.
Yeah. When you hear about somebody who has zero emotion about going in and tying up and cutting somebody open, you're not like, yeah, I've been there, man. Like it's a totally different thing. So that person I think is definitely the more terrifying one.
Fuck yeah. What have you got coming up next? What can people expect from you?
Well, I'm on tour. So I've been on tour and it will continue through the rest of this year. I have a series that I don't know if I can even announce it yet. I can, sort of. Yeah, loosely. It's coming. In the spring,
something will happen over the next few months.
You'll see something in the spring. I'll shoot something else later this year, and I'll tell you about it later.
Are you part of the CIA now? Are you part of Trump's cabinet?
You know what's so funny is like they always have these like, don't say a thing, and then you're like, okay, and then when you do, you're like, nobody fucking cares, dude. Like, yeah, but yeah.
Stuff is coming soon.
Stuff is coming soon, and more stuff will come later. And I also have a few other stuffs that I'll do later in the year.
Dude, what a sign off. It's awesome to meet you. I'm looking forward to bringing you back on.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, man.
Appreciate you. What's happening, people? Thank you very much for tuning in. If you've made it this far to the end of that episode, you must have enjoyed it. Here's another episode that you'll love with Dry Creek Dwayne. Go on. Hurry up.